Well, a busy week at the White House for U.S. President Donald Trump, who dismissed potentially damaging allegations Thursday that close associates and campaign advisors were in frequent contact with Russian intelligence officials during the election campaign. Now, he defended Michael Flynn, his ousted national security advisor, blaming the controversy over Flynn's contacts with Russian officials on illegally leaked information. VOA's Zlatisa Hoke has more.
President Trump on Wednesday blamed the media and the intelligence community for Flynn's downfall.
I think it's very, very unfair what's happened to General Flynn, the way he was treated, and the documents and papers that were illegally, I stress that, illegally leaked. Very, very unfair.
The administration also has to deal with new reports of wiretaps, purportedly revealing multiple contacts between Trump's campaign officials and the Kremlin. Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov denied that such talks took place.
These are just newspaper reports that are not based on any facts, do not point to actual facts.
Republicans and Democrats have agreed to a congressional probe into Russia's involvement in the U.S. presidential election and the content of talks between U.S. and Russian officials. But Republican lawmakers will make sure the probe does not hurt the president, says political analyst Klaus Lares. Lares says an independent bipartisan commission would have more power to conduct a thorough investigation.
An independent commission has entirely different powers and is, of course, much more dangerous to President Trump. And an independent commission is what reminds us of President Nixon and the Watergate scandal.
Now, is there a parallel here to the scandal that took down President Nixon? Well, to help us sort through the facts, what we know and don't know, I'm joined in Washington by two reporters who've been following this story very closely. We welcome VOA National Security Correspondent Jeff Seldin here in the studio and VOA White House Correspondent Mary Alice Salinas. Thank you both for joining us. Mary Alice Salinas, so you've heard the comparisons being made to Watergate. Is it too soon to start comparing this issue with what happened?
Well, they're asking similar questions. I think it is too soon, but they're asking a similar question. What did President Trump know and when
did he know
about the conversations regarding sanctions that Flynn had with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak? So the questions are similar. A lot needs to happen. The investigations are continuing, so we're just beginning this process. So certainly not good news for the White House.
So maybe Donald Trump did himself a favor by actually speaking to reporters on this particular issue, right?
That's right. He had what is described as this kind of wild and
77-minute rambling kind of a news conference. Talked about almost everything, right?
Right, he did. And he spoke again about Michael Flynn. He blamed it on the media. The leaks that the resignation happened, or his downfall essentially happened because of these illegal leaks and because of the media. He did not mention anything about the fact that his spokesperson just the day before told us that it was because the erosion of trust the president had with regard to Flynn, because he misled the vice president, that it wasn't that Flynn did anything wrong, it's that he couldn't trust him anymore. But there was no mention of that during this press conference.
So Jeff Seldin, I want to play devil's advocate a little bit here so we can get to the nub of the problem here. So what if Trump's national security advisor spoke with Russian officials? Is that a problem in itself?
In general, it's not a problem. In fact, it's not unusual for people in an incoming administration, especially national security advisors, others on the diplomatic front, to start reaching out to counterparts in other countries, at other security or diplomatic agencies. What would be a problem is how they discuss sanctions when sanctions were possibly discussed. Were they discussed in a way, did the Russians bring him up and did Flynn say, no, we can't really talk about it? And is that what people are talking about in terms of what's been on the transcripts? Or did they actually engage in some sort of conversation? The one thing that has a lot of people puzzled is that when you're talking about Mike Flynn, he's a veteran of the intelligence agencies. He knows how this works. And a lot of people I've spoken to say it beggars belief to think that he would be engaged with a conversation with the Russian ambassador and not think it was going to be picked up by the NSA and potentially the FBI, or for that matter, the Russians, who would likely be recording it themselves. So it really is hard to think that he would have any conversation, not realizing that people were going to know exactly what he said.
In Mary Alice, wouldn't General Flynn have known that his conversations with Russian officials, Russian officials, would be actually recorded by
Yeah,
NSA?
that is a point. And so that is what's puzzling about this. So the president, the question is, what did the president know about this conversation? And was there a directive from the president to essentially wink, wink, Russia, don't worry about the Obama sanctions he's about to put in place. We got you when we get back in office. That kind of a question, not proven. I'm just saying that's what's out there. And that's, what did he know? When did he know it? And yesterday, the president said, I did not tell him to speak about sanctions, but I would have. That would have been his job. So that's just another
And would he be correct to say that, Jeff? That I should have told him.
There's a fine line in terms of what you can talk about in those conversations before an administration takes office. There's this thing called the Logan Act, which is designed to prevent an incoming administration from talking about stuff, sharing intelligence, and making policy before the new president's in office and potentially upstaging the current administration. It's very hard to prosecute. It really hasn't been done. And so it's very fuzzy in that way. Generally, it's not good protocol. You want to remain consistent. But given the way events played out, there are a lot of questions about just what happened. Because remember, President Obama, while still in office, kicked out a bunch of Russian diplomats. Everyone was expecting, the intelligence community was expecting that the standard thing is Russia would respond in kind. And then Russian President Vladimir Putin didn't, which threw everybody off, and which is what got everybody looking at the transcripts. What do we have on the Russian officials to figure out why is this happening?
Because, Mary Alice, there can only be one United States president at any given time.
Correct.
Could those conversations with the Russian officials have undermined President Obama's sanctions and his decision to oust, 35 Russian diplomats?
And so unusual is, to Jeff's point, that Russia didn't respond. That's sends up all kinds of red flags. Like, what's going on here? This is not the way it works. President Trump says we just want to have good relations with Russia. We're going to go at this, reset it. Or at least he said yesterday at the press conference, that's our hope, that we're going to start fresh. It's a good thing if we get along with Russia. And then he blamed the media for, he says, if I don't get along with President Putin, you media, it's because you have reported on all these leaks.
But it even goes beyond that, because during the news conference, he said, if I can't make a deal with Russia, it's because of what the media has been reporting. Which, again, if
he
you
also blamed the media for having a spy ship, a Russian spy ship off the coast of Delaware. I think he mentioned that it's because of you guys that they're there.
But this also gets into something that's difficult with President Trump, because he uses language unlike almost any other president the United States has ever had. So if you go through the transcript very carefully of what President Trump said during his news conference, you can question what he meant, how he meant it. Again, because he's not using this familiar diplomatic language that most people are accustomed to hearing from a president. It's not good or bad, it's just different. But it gives everybody pause, and it gives U.S. allies pause, because sometimes they don't know what to make of it either.
And one good point being made out there is that while we're all talking about this, there are the real issues out there that the voters that put him in office have, and a lot of Americans have,
Issues
about how
we're
life is here in the United
because
States,
we're talking about something
problems
else,
around the world.
Mary Alice Salinas and Jeff Seldin, thank you so much for filling us in on that. We're going to take a short break right now, but when we come back, more news from the White House as President Trump meets with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. More on that after the break.